Hello and welcome to the Tournament Poker Project, all the way from Essex. My name's John,
And I am Tain.
and we are two, certainly not beginners, but we are two recreational, on our way to being poker masters type players, aren't we?
Yes, we're in waiting. We are just
Waiting, yeah,
tot around the edges, ready to
just
burst on the scene.
biding our time. And
Yes.
basically, this is our journey to getting great at poker so we can go and smash it at the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas, baby.
Yeah. Sharing the spoils of first and second place.
Yeah. Well, should we jump straight into a hand tank?
I'm happy to do that. It looks like a sexy hand from
Let's
what you've
do
made
it.
up.
So let me just set the scene here. So this was a $16.50 multi-table tournament on PokerStars. And I think there was around 200 runners, and we're down to the last three. So this is a thinly veiled brag, as brokers would say. I'm in the top three. So we're down to the last three. We are all pretty even stacked, give or take. We think we're second in chips at 380. The lowest stacker's got 300. The biggest stack's got 450. So there's not a lot in it, all things considered. The blinds are 5,000 and 10,000. And the button, who's the villain in this hand, he raises to 22,000. And the action is on us in the small blind with ace of spades, jack of clubs. So blinds 5, 10,000, button raises to 22,000, action is on us. What are we doing here, Tain?
Raise. 100%.
Raise.
There's only three of you, so the button is raising quite a wide range anyway. But also their calling range would be quite wide and include a lot of hands weaker than this. But it's free-handed, and you'd be giving the big blind way too much incentive to just call. If you just call, you never fold in. So yeah, a nice solid free bet here.
Yeah.
Where would I go?
Couldn't agree more.
Around.
But I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I just flat called. And let me just give you a little bit of the logic. To be honest, I'm going to give you the logic. It doesn't mean it was the correct thing to do. It might have felt right at the time. It still doesn't make it right. But the villain here that raised to 22 was raising virtually everything and was over bluffing post flop. Not ridiculously so. Like he wasn't, it wasn't just like great, call him down with everything. He was just bluffing that bit too much. Like you could just tell his frequency was off. If the amount he's betting was too much, so you just kind of knew, right, this guy's definitely bluffing a bit too much. And I decided, this three-handed had gone on for a long time, and I think my call was me just trying to be a bit tricky, trying to be a bit clever, see if I can catch him out. Take advantages of his over bluffing if I call an ace or a jack, that kind of thing. I don't know if that makes it okay to do, but it felt okay at the time. So we call the big blind folds, and it's just us and the villain to a flop. The flop comes 8 of hearts, ace of clubs, 5 of clubs. So we've got the backdoor club draw, and obviously we've got the pair of aces with a jack kicker. So what to do here? And just to let you know, my thinking does a lot of the decision around his hand are based on the fact I know this guy is a bit over bluffy. We'd kind of just got to that stage. It'd been working out for him because me and the other guy had been folding a lot, and he was slowly chipping up. So yeah, what we should do here? Actions on you with top pair and jack kicker.
We need the pot to grow. And we've got an SPR of what, 6? I think that is. You're the effective stack, so it'll be 6. And you're not going to be able to do that if you bet and they call. We're not worried about the folds. If they're folds, they're going to fold no matter what. So I would check this all day long. You were setting up this check slow play with the call pre-flop. So you've already invited the pressure here. I mean, he might check back behind, but
no, I really like your thinking though. It's like we're telling the story, you know, like if we're gonna flat call pre-flop, let's not go gun ho on the flop. He's gonna, yeah. Then suddenly we've just kind of turned our hand over a little bit.
Yeah, we're playing free-handed. He should be raising confidently for value with any 8 in his hand, because it's you've only there's so few of you. It's so hard to hit the flop. You're going to miss almost, what is it, 2/3 of the flop. He should be betting that anyway. And if he's over bluffing, that leaves a massive ton of everything else. You know, all the aces he's betting, all the fives he's probably betting, and then anything that's remotely connected. If he's got, you know, king of clubs, he's betting.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what are his bluffs here? Because if we're saying he's a bit over bluffy, just a bit, what are kind of legitimate bluff hands here? I mean, to be honest, he's the pre-flop aggressor, and it's an ace has hit the flop. This is, I mean, for me, if I was in his shoes, this is a C bet all day long with any holding. I'd probably C bet my entire range. Given, you know, free-handed, I was a pre-flop aggressor. I've got position, an ace has hit the flop. I'd be C betting it all day long if I'm checked to, like he has been.
Like, it's such a strong flop for his, and it's such a common C bet spot anyway, especially for someone who's over bluffing, that if he checks, I'd put him on a set. That is that kind of flop that I cannot imagine not C betting with anything but something he's so scared to push you out. Which might not actually be a worse play. If he's got a set, exploitatively, you might not be playing any hands. If you've missed, you might not be playing, and you genuinely might need that player to catch up.
But again, you know what, brokers would say, there's no point doing that. Like, if you've got a big hand, bet it, because you want to be value targeting the 8s, the 5s, the ones that can come along. Because if I've got literally nothing on that flop, there's not a lot that I can get to really catch up. Like, say like a king comes, he's going to struggle then getting loads of value out of me hitting a king, because there's still that ace on the board.
Well, so, I don't know. I mean, when I say like slow playing might not be the worst case, is, I mean, not from our perspective. This is the villain slow playing when they've got a set, just because they're C betting so often and they're getting so many folds so often, and because you're in the small blinds and you've just called, if they've just hit a monster, that's the only feasible time I can think they might want to slow play, to exploitatively wait for you to pick up something that you'll call with. And it's never that you're going to come out betting, but if the next card comes a king and he bets quarter pot, you might bet that. Whereas if he bets now and you've only got a king, you're not getting anything.
Or for instance, say I had a 5 or an 8 and he's sitting there with a set of aces, right? And then the 5 or the 8 hits the turn and I've suddenly got trips. Like, that is just such a great card for him, isn't it? Like, and that's the sort of hand where I might be a bit reluctant to put chips in with a 5, but once there's 2 5s on the board, he's got my whole stack because he's sitting there with everyone else. Yeah, I see that. Okay. So, the
main strategy is what I said. I'd be checking this with range.
Yeah, and I do check. I do agree, and I do check. The villain then bets just a bit more than third pot. So he bets 22,000 into the 57,000 pot, which is kind of, you know, it's just completely to be expected. It's maybe slightly bigger than you'd expect, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's about right, about a third, isn't it? Just over a third. So not a million miles away from where I expect it to be. I imagined he was going to bet range. I mean, to me, this is a call all day long. Just keep telling that story, you know. I've got something. It's not that strong. let him
No,
carry on bluffing if he's bluffing?
I'd take a different ilk. I think your SPR is too low. I would check
Okay.
raise to build the pot, because especially when people are over bluffing, it might be just the games I'm playing in, but I don't. People will call that check raise, but then not know what to do. When the fact is that they shouldn't have called that check raise. They had a bluff, which was the C bet with range, and then they've got caught with their pants down, and they should fold. But they don't know to do that, so they'll call that bet, and then they'll pick up a little bit more equity. So they'll all of a sudden pick up a flush draw that goes with their middle pair, and then they're like, I can't fold now, and that's when you get to continue with the aggression, because you hope that it has that little bit of extra. There's quite a lot of the flop cards, or a brick comes, and if they did have a hand to start with, you start pushing that for pressure, because that's when I feel you could really start targeting their value, because if they've got air, they're just going to fold anyway. So that you're not interested in their air at this point. You're interested in their weaker aces and their strong eights. If they've got king eight, something like that, or king seven, they're really playing a black door. I don't think that's the case, but that kind of hand where
What about though? I completely agree with you, but what does check raising here do to all the bluffs in their range? Like if they're holding a couple of clubs here, and then the turn comes a non-club, how's that going to impact? Is that not kind of
they're not
halting the?
It's more. I do get the point of letting them bet, but you've called the bet, so you've shown that you've got enough of that flop that you can call their bet. So they've got rid of all your trash anyway. They've strengthened your range, so they shouldn't keep relentlessly barreling. The next card, even a three, starts completing straights. Even a jack starts completing some of the broadways. Another club, there's a lot of cards that's just going to make them check behind, and it makes it quite difficult to navigate. Like, your calls are strong, but for me, the main problem is the SPR, because if you feel
so it's too high. Do you mean like there's too big a number?
Yeah, it's if this player's weak and they're bluffing a bit too often, or they're calling badly or anything like that, but getting the chips, getting the SPR down and getting the pot as big as possible is really in your favour. The last thing you want is for clubs to be coming out and then trying to build the pot at the end when flush draws are possible or straights are now possible. Do it now, and if it gets folds, most likely that might have been the last bet you see anyway. And if there was an extra bluff that the villain had, there was also an extra value hand that they hit that you then got worried about and folded, if that makes sense. There's cards that you're worried about. This is just a single pair hand still. So there is issues with exposure as well. There's a slight protection side to it.
Say, for instance, villain happens to have flopped a set here. Like, if we're check raising him, if he goes all in, are we calling that? Like, what I'm saying is, are we worried about any hands, or is it we've got top pair, we're going all the way? Because to me, an SPR of 6 and bit 6.4 or whatever it is, that's not really a hand to go all the way with top pair with. So what would you, if we are check raising this and then villain jams over the top, are we folding?
Yes. On the same, but it'll be the exact same assumption. If top pair with jack kicker is not strong enough for us to get it all in, it's not strong enough for the villain to shove. So their shoving range would be 2 pair or better, and we're losing to that. So that would be my reasoning for that. And if they did that as a bluff, that's a poor choice of bet, because you've shown strength and they're going to be losing that massive pot quite often. So it's that kind of reasoning. So unless you've got evidence that their bluffs are wild,
not wild, yeah, that's the thing. They're not. So fair enough. All right, I can get with what you're saying there for sure. Okay, so I don't check raise here. I actually, in the game, I called the bet. So the pot now is totaling 102,000 as we go to a turn. We've got about 340 left in our stack. Villain's sitting on about 420.
So,
The turn comes the 3 of diamonds. So just to recap, we have ace of spades, jack of clubs. The board currently reads 8 of hearts, ace of clubs, 5 of clubs, 3 of diamonds. So action is on us. What are you thinking?
at this stage, given the action, you definitely just check 100%. And the check on the previous street weren't a bad choice. It's just I felt there was better value in the check raise. So to continue this action is good action. So I'd 100% continue that. Doing anything differently is unusual.
All right, fine. And I completely agree. And I did in game. I checked. The villain now goes pretty chunky. So he bets 67,000 into 102,000. So pretty much exactly 2/3 pot. This is starting to feel like that DTO. It feels like what DTO would be telling me I should be betting if I was villain in this instance. But then like trying to rack my brain thinking, well, what hand should I be betting 2/3 pot with? It would be strong aces and bluffs. But what bluffs has he really got? I mean, like I say, he does over bluff a bit. But it doesn't mean he's bluffing with air balls. Two clubs is potentially a bluff he's got, but we do block clubs. We've got the jack of clubs. It could be that he opened with something like 6-7 suited, possibly. So he's got an open-ended straight. That's a possible bluff. If he's got an 8 or a 5, then it's a bit of a weird bet to continue with, I would say. I think he's got enough showdown value to just carry on. If he's got an ace, he's got enough showdown value to carry on. If he's got, say, like ace, I don't know, ace 7 suited here, should he be betting 2/3 pot, considering I flat called the flop? That feels like once you've got a smaller ace like that, he should really be pot controlling a little bit. We're there's some big old pay jumps now. Do you want to be just committing everything with top pair and a 7 kicker or a 9 kicker or something like that? He's going big here, isn't he? He's like teeing it up for quite a sizable river bet as well.
Yeah, see, I feel that the villains, this is a good move by the villain. It's trying to polarize their range to some degree, not fully. Like an overbet would have been a bit better if that's really what he's going for. But he is trying to now polarize and say, I've either got rubbish, so I'm trying to push you out of some better quality hands, King 8 or something, or 8-7, 8-6, where you've got, the gut shot to go with it. But also he's going to be doing that with his strong aces. But I do feel that this is the kind of hand that he would do this with good aces that are worse than ours.
Really? Ace 10 and stuff like that?
Yeah, because there's not much action. Your range hasn't been restricted. It hasn't been trimmed down. You've probably got, hundreds of combos still in it. So.
No. And he would have expected me to be raising ace, jack, ace, queen, like pre-flop. I'm talking about pre-flop. He'd expect a 3-bet, and I didn't do that. So yeah, I suppose ace 9, ace 10. He's probably thinking, great, like I've got this guy. This guy's got an 8, and he's calling me down, but I've got the ace.
If he's value targeting, he's targeting them exact hands. He's targeting the good draws, the combo draws, and he's targeting the good strong 8s. For instance, or even if he's got a weaker ace, he could be targeting the bottom end of the weaker aces. But I feel that this is a good bet, and I do feel it's a value bet, even with the weaker aces, just because of how wide your range is. So unless you're going to fold 80% of hands, you should be trying to find calls from much worse hands. So I don't mind their play at all.
No, it's both of these two. It was a really good level by this point, and I felt like I'd met met my match. Definitely, I was kind of. It was a tussle at this point.
Yeah, but let's be clear. I feel that the freezer brick, as much as it's got a little bit of completing in it, I feel that the hands that should be connecting with that in a real significant way are such a small part of their range that, okay, it might have, but the chances are it didn't. So
yeah, it's unlikely, isn't it? What, 4-2?
Be conscious if a 2 or a 4 come,
4.
but yeah, or a 6, but that's it. And that's just okay, look, if they jam at that point, maybe just huff and fold. But the truth is, he's value betting, and I don't think he has much better than your hands to value bet. He could.
Yeah.
Ace Queen would be a great hand to do this kind of thing with, but I don't think he's got much better.
No.
Like, I don't think he's got a set, is where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the action? Are we calling this, Tain, or doing some other crazy ass shit here?
I can't see the value in raising, because you're essentially asking him to fold everything but what beats you.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I think call's the only action. There's no way you're folding still. So yeah, call.
I do call. So I do feel that's the best action given what we've spoke about and the action up to this point. So we now go to a river with 237,000 in the pot and 276 behind in the effective stack, which is ours. And the river card is the 2 of diamonds. So the final board reads 8 of hearts, ace of clubs, 5 of clubs, 3 of diamonds, 2 of diamonds. We're sitting first to act with ace jack. So, well, look, the club flush didn't get there, right? The 6-7 suited didn't get there. The 4-6, was that ever in his range? It doesn't feel like he's betting any kind of gut. It wasn't even a gut shot on the flop. Did he just bet his entire range on the flop and then bluff a gut shot on the turn? That he's a bit over bluffy. It's a possibility, but yeah, this is where it's hard with someone who's bluffing a fair bit, because it's like, oh, maybe he has got this. Maybe he's bluffing a gut shot on the turn, you know.
John, you know what you've got to do. I was singing it just before we went on air. You've got to do your baby bluffs. I'd do a baby blocking bet here. I feel that would be the strongest move, because I don't think it will be. You just want it to look that way. So I'd bet like 2 big blinds, like real tiny, trying to desperately say to him, please don't raise me, please don't raise me.
But,
and I feel
everything you said is exactly he jams, right. What? And then what if he jams? Then just call it. So we're calling anything here, right?
Yeah, because I don't think he's got enough 4s in his range to make that valuable.
I think he's got 4s. It doesn't.
But more importantly, basically it's like, I feel the danger of him checking behind here is massive. I might be wrong, but 4 to a straight from the small blind who's done nothing but check call. That 4 is a huge part of your range now. Considering the turnout of the board, you're going to get checked behind, I feel, disproportionately high. I feel that he'll be over checking behind to the point that you've lost all value. So a tiny little bet that you hope he'll call is either your best chance of getting a raise, which I'd probably consider calling, or more likely he'll cry and call and then lose.
The only thing is, though, he's not going to call if he has got like a busted flush draw there or a busted straight draw or whatever.
But he's not going to raise you anyway, so you've won the same pot.
But is he not? Do you think considering the action, and all I've done is like passively call all the way, if I check to him now, say you're in villain shoes, you get checked to at this point, and he's got like I don't know, Queen 10 of clubs. He knows, because I've been calling down, he's probably beaten by like an 8 or a 5 or a raggy ace or something. Is he just going to lay it down and check, or is he going to be like, I'm going I'm going to bluff this guy. I've missed my flush. I can't win unless I bluff him off it now. It's 237,000 in the pot. It's a really big pot.
Well, yeah. I think the question you need to ask is, do you call his jam? Because if you're calling his jam, then the way the chips go in is important. So me doing a blocking bet and him jamming over the top is probably not ideal. You checking and him jamming is not a problem. If you're happy to call that, knowing that he's got enough bluffs in it.
Yeah.
Whereas
with that in mind, then I'm just checking. I'm going to check, and then I'm going to check call basically.
Yeah, my personal feeling is a very small bet, donk it in, and they're likely to call it with an 8 or a 5.
Okay.
Or a king high missed flush or something.
Well, I choose to check. Villain then slams in a half pot bet for 114k, which is not a million miles away from half of my remaining stack. If I was to call this now and lose, I would have 162,000 left, which would be half of or pretty much half of what the second in chips has got. And this big stack will then be a really monster stack, right? So there's already 351 in with 114, which would be 465 on top of his 244. He's going to have an absolute monster stack if we call this and he's got us beat. So it's kind of a really tough decision. And if he'd have jammed, I almost feel like it's a bit easier. It's like an obvious bluff, or not an obvious bluff, but it's polarized at least. This doesn't feel that polarized. This feels like a value bet all of a sudden. You know, he's betting an amount I could call with an 8, or I could call with a raggy ace, you know. It's like he wants me to call.
No, I see what you're saying, but I feel that makes it an efficient bet rather than a cally bet. That means that he's betting enough to get some good hands to fold. He's bet, like, so say you got ace 7, you know, so you had an ace with a draw, and that's the draw's missed, so you just got a raggy ace now, kind of thing. He's betting enough that hand is now probably going to cry and fold, but also enough that you're also calling with the strongest of your 8s when he's got an ace. Like, it's that kind of, it's an efficient bet that does what he needs it to regardless of whether he's bluffing or whether he's value betting.
Yeah, but hang on, we're not folding ace 7 but calling 8, are we? If we think 8 is strong enough to call, then we're definitely calling if we've got an ace, aren't we?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's I don't see the bet being enticing. I think he's bet what you'd bet if he was bluffing and value.
I think so. It's like a kind of a middle amount, isn't it? Yeah, it's like it's not obviously a polarized range. It's like
less than half is a blocking bet. More than half is a huge value when you think your opponent's strong. No, but I'm not. I wouldn't look into the set bet size much at all. I'd be looking more at how often is he getting to this point with pure bluffs, and how often is he getting to this point with strong value, and how does that look? So, for instance, if he's rating ace 10 as strong value, ace 9 as strong value, then the times you're losing to ace queen and ace king are kind of balanced. If he's doing this with ace 6, then you're calling all day long because he thinks he's value betting an ace, and you've got him made. If you feel that he's doing this with the best of his 8s, for instance, or 8 plus a bluff, and if he's doing this with every single missed flush draw and every single missed straight draw, then again it's a pure call. It's all about where we're putting the level of his value. So, for instance, he has every opportunity to just check behind, and he hasn't chosen that. So is he going to do that with way too many bluffs, or is he doing that with value that's well below your hand?
So to answer your question, I think value hands, he's doing this with probably most of his aces, if not all of his aces, certainly 2 pair or better as well. But I think once we get to he's got an 8, then I don't think he'd be doing that for value. I think that's where he would be. Right, I've got some showdown value. I'll get to the river cheap. The bluffs. So we know. So the value hands are all the aces. The bluffs are missed club draws really, and then maybe 6, 7 suited, and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
So how does that add up? How does that compare? Like, how many
There's
bluffs are
every
there?
chance. I mean, I'm looking at hands more like an 8 that he's now turning into a bluff.
Okay.
For instance, so he had an 8 with 2 diamonds, and then he picked up not 2 diamonds. No, let's say like he did a 5 with 2 hearts. So he had a backdoor flush, but then that flush fouled, and then he's got to the river and not improved. So he's just turning that 5 into a bluff, because what other bluffs does he have? But then if he's got too many, if he's doing this with massive part of his range, then I can't see possibly where the value is.
I don't think it was like airball bluffing. He wasn't like a maniac, but yeah, I find this really tough, because I know what you're saying about don't look at the bet size too much, but to me this isn't like, if he's bluffing here, like this is a really callable amount for someone who, like, if he knows I've got a part of the board that I've happily called the flop, the turn, he must know there's a good chance I'm going to call this river with a bet that's not ridiculously big. Like, all right, it's going to really dent my stack quite heavily, but I'm still in the game. I mean, big blind's 10,000. I'll have 100, and I'll have like 16 big blinds left. It's not like it's completely knocking me out. It's certainly not my tournament life. It does feel like an amount that's trying to get me to fold. Certainly, if he thinks I've got an ace, surely he can't think I'm going to lay it down for.
But then he wouldn't be bluffing you. So you'll be playing kicker. Like, he wouldn't be bluffing in this spot if he feels that you have got an ace. If he's betting that amount, knowing that you might have an ace, you're losing, kind of thing. He's got a strong hand. But I think it's because half pot bet on the river is a real standard amount. Like, I imagine he's only got 3 sizes at this point. Right. And that's one of them. So it's not, I think that's how I'm looking at it. So for instance, for every time you say it's a callable amount, I'd counter that with he's not betting too much, because you're the most likely to have a 4. So so he's as scared of betting stupid into a hand that's just called down and I've got the straight that I was going for, as because you've got so many more 4s in your range. You've got all the 4s in your range compared to his very few. So, and he has strengthened your hand street to street to the best draws and aces. And he might be thinking the times you've got an ace, he loses. The times you've got you've hit your draw, he loses. And the times you've missed, the times he's going to profit with half pot. You only need to.
So say he puts me on like an 8 here, right? And I've called the flop with it. I've called the turn with it, and then the river is like another blank. Does he think I'm folding an 8 on the river, that I've called the flop, turn, and then the river comes a complete blank really, and then he bets half pot? Do you think he would be thinking I'm folding an 8 by the river, even though I've called the flop and the turn with it?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Just because you called a previous street, if someone continues to put action, they're strengthening their range. So they might still have bluffs in it, but they're not doing that completely silly. So the way I'd look at that is, if you've got an 8 and he's betting, every time another card comes, gives them further opportunities to have improved their hands. So their range is strengthened as well. So they're not going to be doing that. They're not going to keep firing bullets just completely blind. So either their hand's improving, or their hands is very, very strong, or this is part of their range that they've got nothing else to do but bluff. Unless you're saying they're indiscriminately bluffing, their continued action should have some nature of value. So you might call one street and then think, look, if they're throwing another bet in, they've strengthened their hand to the point that I don't have the strength to stand up against my calling range needs to be better now. So that's how I'd look like it.
Yeah. All right. No, I'm on board with that. Definitely. All right,
But
Tane. Well, look, we've deliberated this. It's crunch time. What are we doing? Are you going to call this?
100%, yeah, like
100%.
100%.
Okay.
He,
I think it's a
his
call for
value
me as well.
hands, he's got, yeah, sorry, I can't see him having enough value hands that are stronger than yours. So yeah, I'd call.
All
Put
right.
him on
Well,
ace queen, but I'd call.
I do call his bet. So there's now 465,000 in the pot. I'm just going to ask you because it's been such a fun hand to do. So I'm going to make it even more fun. What hand has he got, Tane? What's he got?
Oh yeah, I said earlier, I think he's got something like ace queen. Don't think it's ace king, but I think something like ace queen off or something.
He's been value betting ace queen. Okay.
Yeah, or like ace seven maybe. So it's got a bit of a combo on it. They're the two that I'm plucking for.
Okay. He has 6-7 offsuit. So he had the open-ended straight on the flop
And he went
and
wild in the aisle.
just free barreled it. He was bluffing with the open-ended straight draw on the flop, barreled it on the turn, got to river, completely missed, is now sitting there with 7 high, and I've caught one of his bluffs. There's the upshot. I've caught one of his bluffs.
So like I'm trying to put the bluff in there where he's blocking a lot of the hands. He's blocking almost every hand that is most likely to have a 4 in it. And I think that plays a big part of his strategy there. So it's quite unlikely that you're going to be playing 9-4. So 7-4, 6-4 maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I think ace-4. But I do feel that was... I can see what he was doing, but yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think he's overestimating what's going to fold to his aggression. Not thinking it through that if you've got an ace, he's just firing money at you. Anyway, good hand.
Not a bad hand, right? And then I can't remember exactly what happened after that, but I know I still went out third. So it was a good game though. It was fun.
But yeah, it was a good win.
Yeah, that was a good pot.
Puts you back in the money.
So what's going on, Tane? You got any poker coming up?
Absolutely none. I've been, I'm going to say studying, but I've not. I've just been listening a lot and trying to get my head around certain concepts. But it's not that I've fallen out of love with spin and goes, which is what I used to play like 2-3 times a day on the train and stuff. But
yeah,
I have had such a bad run of variance with them that I can't tolerate anymore. Not emotionally, as in my bankroll can't tolerate anymore. So I'm looking for opportunities to start putting in some bigger tournaments or actual proper sit and goes that I can do a proper game. But having a reliable time that I can sit down every single week and do it is at the moment not working. So I'm literally playing games with you over a podcast is the most I've played an actual hand, really.
Well, it's the most fun, and it's cheap because you don't have to put any money in.
So yeah, exactly. And I get to make mistakes. Have you played any more Mega Millions or anything like that recently?
No, I've not been playing, but I was checking out today some live tournaments in the Portimao Casino in Malta. So I'm in Malta at the moment and here for the next few weeks. And they seem to be doing tournaments every night down there. So, and they range from like $50 up to about $100 on a Friday night. Sorry, euros, not dollars. So I'm in for that. Yeah, I probably won't do the 100 one. That's a little bit slightly trumpy. I was actually looking at the Thursday night because it's 70 euros, but there's a maximum of 2 re-entries. And not that I would be ever buying in more than that anyway, but I just think that stops it being an absolute, shove fest, crazy, whoever's got the most money wins type game. I like the fact that there's a limit, so looking at the guaranteed amounts, it's probably just a 2 or 3 table tournament each night, but I kind of like that. That's a nice size. Starts at 7. I can get down there as a late reg for a couple of hours. So yeah, I might go and check that out maybe next week.
Yeah, what you just said there about the field size is something that I'm sure Carlos Welch was mentioning recently, where I've really, without realizing it, I really do chase the 1, 2, 3,000 field, just because it comes with a, you play $5 and you get this huge, massive, big top money.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I actually do fairly all right in them. My return on investment's over 30%, but the variance is high and the effort is so high. And they're like, look, if you're going to play volume, even just a small amount, the money's in small field. Apart from where it gets so small that you're playing against all regs, small field is so much easier to navigate. You get so many more wins. And that was it. They was talking about the mindset of the win. And it's like, if you're going to play big field, just give up on ever winning. Whereas if you play a 80-player tournament, you should expect to win. And that's a good feeling. Yeah, that will motivate you to play more. So I'm going to look at focusing on that next game. I'll play hopefully under 100 runners and see how I get on.
Yeah, I like that theory. I like a smaller field.
So, yeah. Good luck to you. Hope you go into it, mate.
Well, look, thanks again for the hand, Tain. And
nice. Cheers for going for it.
Thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please do leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And see you next time.
Take it easy. Thanks, everyone.